Hello, all. Good morning. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
So yesterday we created some basic programs. So what is the transaction code to create a program?
SC38.
So
SC38.
SA38 is the transaction code. And what is the rule to
SC
create any custom program?
name should start with Z or Y.
Z or Y, right? All custom objects like our own custom developments in ABAP should start with Z or Y, right? And no spaces allowed. You can use underscore if you want to separate the name. So what type of program we create to provide the input and display the output? Executable program, right?
Executable program.
The type of the program should be executable program. Okay. Once observe this R3 architecture. So in the database server, in the database layer, data stores permanently in the form of tables. Okay. So permanent storage where the data stores in the form of tables. In application layer, programs will execute in application layer which interacts with the database to read the data or to insert the data, right? All the business logic, validations, right? Everything will happen in the application layer. So the application programs will be available in application layer. Okay, clear? It interacts with the
Yes, sir.
database every time. Whenever you request for the data, whenever you want to display some data or whenever you want to insert some data, right? So when you want to see, right, who are all the employees in a particular department, is it read or insert? Which operation it will do on database? It is reading the data. It will read the existing data from the department related tables and display as an output, right? When you need to create a new employee in the system, a employee newly joined in the company, you need to create a record for that. So we insert that record into corresponding database tables using a program, right? By performing all the validations. We don't directly insert the record. We perform all the validations, business logic, right? If everything is correct, then only we insert the data into database tables, right? So in the application level, the application programs will execute like whatever the standard programs provided by SAP as part of standard functionality or any custom programs, right? Which we create as part of the custom requirements. Everything will execute in the application layer, right? Now talk about the memory. So in the database, we have huge memory and like the data stores in the form of tables permanently. But what about the application layer level? Here, we don't store any data permanently, right? We don't store any data permanently. The data which we use in the application layer level is only at the runtime, program runtime. We read the data from the database, keep the data into some temporary memory, use for your business logic and validations. And once the program execution is completed, the data, the memory allocated for that data will be deleted. So the data is not going to store permanently in the application layer level. We just access the data from database layer and apply some calculations on that and display the output, right? Is everyone clear on this?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'll give you a quick overview on the different data types. So in general, like if you need to store name, like city, address for these kind of values, what is a suitable data type? Character.
Character.
For phone number, postal code, right? Any other general attributes, which should be number, right? So for that we use a number type n. Okay. Again, it's not for the values like calculations or values. It's for any general attribute like phone number, zip code. These are not values, right? And when we use integer, when we need to store values, positive or negative values, and it won't accept any decimals, it will round the decimal value. Okay, it will round the decimal value. Packed decimal. Packed decimal is for currency and quantity. Like if you need to maintain any currency values like amount or quantity. Okay. So if you observe the conversion, we can convert numerical types into character type. That is allowed, but we cannot convert character type into numerical types. But there are some ways to convert, but in general, it is not possible. Okay. If you try, it will throw some runtime errors. If you try to convert character values into numerical data types. Okay. Now we have a concept called data objects. What are these data objects? So we use these data objects, right, to store the data temporarily in the program level. Program level in the sense in which layer we are talking about, which server we are talking about, application server or database server? Application server, right? So programs will execute in the application server. So the data objects are used to hold the value temporarily in the program runtime. Okay. So for example, if you read any data from the database table using a program, for the program execution, we need to temporarily hold that records or data in some memory, right? So we use data objects to store that data temporarily in the program level. Is it possible to store permanently in data objects? No, it is only temporarily. It is only during program runtime as long as the program execution is active. Once the program execution is completed, whatever the memory available in data objects will be vanished, right? Now, what are the different data objects we have? Variable. We have already used variable in the previous program. So what is the syntax to define a variable? Data and variable name.
Variable
Variable
name.
name can be anything. Variable name can be anything, but always try to use relevant names, right? Follow some naming standards. Okay. For example, we use LV name. For example, if you are trying to create a data object for the name, LV phone. For example, you are trying to create a data object for phone number, right? Provide some relevant names. Otherwise, it will accept any name. Okay. But when you look at this name, when you look at this variable in your program, you should be easily able to identify what type of object it is. Is it a parameter? Is it a variable? Is it a work area? Right? You should be able to easily identify that. For that, we follow naming standards. Okay. Otherwise, you can give any name. Right? Example, data, LV underscore, type. We need to specify the type of the data object. What type of data object it is? It might be character, number, date, time, packed decimal,
Data.
floating point, etc. Right? And depends on the data type, you need to provide the length. For character, number, and packed decimal, you need to mention the length of the data object. Right? For date, you don't need to provide for date and time. Let's assume it as number type and length as 10. Now, what it will do? It will create one memory in the application layer. This one. A memory to store 10 numbers. Right? Right? Some number. It will create a memory. Can we store multiple values in this? Can we store multiple values like name and phone number? No, it is only for one value. Variable is only for one value. That might be either name or phone number. We can store only one value. It is for one field. If you take our employee table as example, you can store employee ID or employee name, any one value in this variable. For the other field, you need to define one more variable, data LV underscore name, type, character, length, 10. So it will create one more memory area to store the name of the employee as per the length and data type provided. It will create one more memory. So in variable, we can store only single value. We cannot store multiple fields or multiple values. Okay. So what is the property of variable? We can store single value, and value of the variable can be changed during program runtime. So the value of the variable can be changed during the program runtime. For example, first you assign one name, name one. How to assign values? LV underscore name equal to, within the single quotes, you can pass the value. And later, depends on some other condition, you can update that value into a new value. Okay. So variable value can be changed during program runtime, and it can hold only a single value, depends on the data type. Right? Is everyone clear about variable? Is everyone clear?
Yes, sir.
To provide the data type, right? To provide the data type, right? We have another alternative. We can provide data element name also. How many of you know data elements? What is a data element?
It is a semantic attribute.
Semantic attribute of the table field. Instead of this data type and length, right? You can simply provide a data element name. So it will automatically apply whatever the data type and length declared for this field. For example, what is the other way of defining name? Data LV underscore name, type zdemo, data element name. Okay, whatever the data element you created in the database table, you can provide that name here, so that you don't need to worry about the data type of the variable or length of the variable. Whatever the data type and length maintained in the database table, same will be applied to this variable. Okay, so it will create a memory exact match with the table field. Okay, with the same type and same length. Is everyone clear? If you use a data element. Okay. Next data object, constant. What is constant? The value of the constant cannot be changed during program runtime. We cannot change the value of the constant. It is always fixed. Once you assign the value, you cannot change it. But what about variable? You can change the value during the program runtime.
Runtime.
It will allow, right? You can assign new values every time whenever required. It can also hold single value. What about constant? Constant can also hold a single value, right? It also holds a
Won't
single
change also.
value, but the value of the constant cannot be changed during program
Okay.
runtime, right? So instead of providing hard-coded values, right, within single quotes we provide hard coded values, right? Instead of hard coded values, we use constants, right? So how to define a constant? Okay, it cannot be changed. So how to define a constant? Constant, constant name, that can be anything. Constant name can be anything, but we follow naming standards, right? We follow some naming standards because by looking at that object, we should be able to identify what type of object it is. Is it a constant, parameter, or variable, right? For that, mostly we start constant names with C underscore or LC underscore or GC underscore. GC nothing but global constant, LC nothing but a local constant. So we'll see that later. What is the difference between these global and local variables, right? And global and local constants. For now, use the C, um, company or DEPT, department. Type, what type of the value it is. Either you can assign data type, length, or simply use data element name. Okay, simply use data element name, whatever you maintained in the table level. So it will apply same data type and length for this constant. It will create a memory, right? It will create a memory in the application server for the program runtime. And what is the next important syntax? Value. You should assign a value when you are defining the constant itself. When you are defining the constant itself, you need to assign the value for this constant. That is mandatory. For example, SAP. So the constant contains the value SAP and you cannot change this value. You cannot change this value. Okay. It is not possible to change the value of the constant once you assigned it. Okay. Is everyone clear? Is everyone clear on difference between variable and constant?
Sir, why we need to assign values, sir, for this constant?
So what do you mean by constant? A value which never changes, right?
Okay.
So instead of doing hard-coded values, instead of providing hard-coded values, we use constants to define some value so that we use same value throughout the program. And we make sure that value we are not going to change it.
Same.
We are
Yes, sir.
fixing something, right? For example, country, we need to fix it to India, right? So we recommend the programmers or the developers use that constant, right? So that whatever the code you are writing, that will be consistent, right? If you start using hard coded values like this, right? When you are, you can also use variable. You can assign some value and you can also use some value. But can you make sure that this value of the variable is not going to change?
No, sir, it will change.
No, it will
If
change,
it,
right? There is a possibility that this value can be changed, right? But
yes,
when you need to make sure that I don't want to change the value of that, right, data object, and I want to use same value throughout the program. In that case, use constants.
constant.
And whenever you are writing hard-coded data, right, instead of using hard-coded data, we create it as constant and use it. Okay, here.
Yes, sir, clear.
for both variable and constant. It will create a memory for single value, please remember, a single field, right? Next, work area. What is work area? Work area holds a record during program runtime. It will also create a memory, but not only for the single field, for the complete record. What is a record? Record is a meaningful information. Record is nothing but meaningful information. If you take variable, for example, if it is just employee ID, that is not meaningful information, right? So when we call it a record, when that is contains employee ID, name, and few other details. It's a complete information, right? About something. So that we call as a
Yes.
record. It contains multiple fields. A record contains multiple fields, right? But variable or constant, it contains only single field value. But when you take work area, it contains a record. It will create a memory for record to store multiple fields, right? Altogether, we call that as a record. And work area can hold only one record at a time, right? For example, employee ID 100, employee name and city. It can hold one record at a time. Okay. Work area contains at least a single field or more than one field, right? It contains single field also, right? One or more fields. A work area contains one or more fields. Okay. How to define the work area? Syntax is same, data, and provide the work area name. And what is the type? The type we take table name or structure name, right? We take the table name as reference to define the work area. Sorry, any question?
No, sir. No.
Okay. So we use here we are just
Sir,
taking
I have
data.
one question. Hello.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, you have created one constant, no?
Right.
That will be only the fixed constant, or that will be very changeable something
So when we go for
like
constant,
like in SQL there is some of the constant like null constant, not null constant. There
oh
will
no, no,
be any
here in
changes or
ABAP, you cannot change the constant when you assign the value. Okay.
okay.
So once
Okay.
you
If
assign the
you
value throughout the program, you have to use same value. You cannot
okay,
update
okay.
it. If you
Now
want a
we want to
different constant,
create.
you can create another constant. If you want
Okay.
a
Now
different
we
value,
want to create. We want to repeat that name or repeat that value. Means we can define a constant. Means it will repeat it.
you cannot repeat the constant name or variable name or work area name. They should be
Okay.
unique,
Okay.
right? You can use
Unique.
different
Okay.
name with a different value.
Okay.
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 So work area can hold a single record which contains one or more fields. And this is the declaration data, work area name, type. Instead of providing data element or data type, we provide a table name here, right? So whatever the fields available in the table, it will create a work area with reference to the table. For example, in employee master table, if you have 5 fields, it will create a work area with 5 fields here with the same type and same length for each field, right? Clear? How to define a work area?
Data.
Okay, can hold a single record during program runtime. How to define it? Data. Here also we provide naming convention, naming standards. Otherwise you can provide any name like work area. It will accept, right? But it is not recommended as per the programming standards. Follow some naming guidelines. For example, WA underscore employee. So by looking at this name, we can easily identify. It looks like it is a work area for employee data, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
When you refer this work area in the program, you can easily identify that. That's why we follow some naming standards. You can also use LV. We use the LV for variable, right? So it won't stop you to use LV for work area. You can use it, right? But it's not a good practice. By looking at this, I assume it as a variable, but it's actually a work area, right? Type. And what is the reference type we pass here? Data element. If you pass data element, it will become a variable, right? Even though you take WA underscore. If you pass data element here, what will happen? It will define a variable, not the work area, right? Demo employee table name or structure name. Provide table name as the reference. So it will create a work area with whatever the fields available in the employee table, right? Like this. Clear?
Yes, sir.
At a time, it can hold only single value. It cannot accept multiple records. Next, internal table. What is internal table? Internal table is also a memory or a temporary table which we use to store multiple records, one or more records in the program runtime. How it is different from work area? Work area can hold only single record, but internal table can hold more than
Multiple
one record,
records.
one or more record, at least one record and more than one record, right? It holds temporarily during the program runtime as a table, in the tabular format, right? It can hold multiple records, more than one record. Clear? So internal table is like a table which can hold multiple records. Work area is a work area can hold only single record during program runtime. Okay? Clear? And fields. Fields of the internal table can be one or more, at least one, more than one field. Okay? If you have only employee ID, we can still call that as an internal table if you define it as a internal table. For example, if your department ID table contains only one field, that is department ID. When you create an internal table with reference to that department ID database table, how many fields you can find in the internal table? Only one field, because there is only one field in the database table, right? It is not necessary to have multiple fields in the internal table or work area. Okay, clear? But if you want only single field, do we really need a work area? We can simply use variable, right? If you just need one single field and one record. So how to define an internal table? Syntax is this: data, internal table name, type table of reference database table name, reference database table name, right? We use work area to so we use the work area to process the records of the internal table. We cannot directly process internal table records. We use a work area with same type as the internal table. So we define a work area and we process the records of the internal table. Okay. And this internal table memory is also temporary, only during program runtime. Only during program runtime. Once the program execution is completed, the memory will be deleted in the application server. So always remember, when you are providing the data type and length, right? Please analyze about the value, provide, right? Relevant data type and length. If you unnecessarily provide 100 for this phone number, what will happen? Number length as 100. Is it really required 100 for the phone number? It will unnecessarily occupy memory. It will
Yes.
unnecessarily occupy the memory in the application layer. Right? When you are executing the program, it will unnecessarily create a large amount of memory in the application layer. So it will impact the performance of the program executions because hundreds of programs are going to be executed in parallel in any production system, right? If you provide incorrect length or data type, right? Right, if you are providing length which is not required, right? So it will unnecessarily occupy the memory and it will impact the performance of the program executions. So that's why I always recommended to use a proper data type and length, right? Is everyone clear? So constant is for fixed values,
Fixed value.
right? Where we cannot change the value of the constant in the program runtime. So variable value can be changed during program runtime. Both variable and constant can have only single value, right? Single field value. Variable value can be changed, but constant value cannot be changed. Work area. So work area can hold a single record. A record contains one or more fields, some meaningful information, right? So the data of the work area can be changed during program runtime. You can update the values, you can update the value of the work area during program runtime. It won't stop you. Okay. It can hold a single record. Record contains one or more fields. Okay. And to define a work area, we use table reference or structure reference. Internal table. Internal table can hold one or more records during program runtime. Okay. To process the records of the internal table, we need a work area. So we need this combination of internal table and work area, which refers to same table, which should refers to the same table. Okay. So we should define a work area with reference to the same table and we should define an internal table with reference to the same table, right? Then only you can process records of the internal table by using work area one by one. Okay. Is everyone clear? We can also update, right, records of the internal table. We can modify the records of the internal table during program runtime. Only constant value cannot be changed. Variable, work area and internal table values can be changed during program runtime. Now, so we talk about defining work areas using data statement like using internal table and work area. So this is the syntax to define the internal table. Type table of. For work area, we just use type. For the internal table, we use type table of, then the table name. It will define the internal table. If you use a table of, right? And also here we use a proper naming convention like this. Data, for example, IT underscore employee type table of ZDemo employee, database table name. Now it will define an internal table with reference to this database table. Okay. So we use a proper naming convention, that is IT. In some cases we use LT also. LT means local table, or GT, global table, right? So by looking at this object, we should be able to identify it as an internal table. Otherwise, you can also use WA underscore employee. So which one it's going to create now? If you use WA employee type table of ZDemo employee, what type of object, data object it's going to create?
Work area.
Internal table, work area, variable, or constant. What type of object it will create
Work
as per
area.
this syntax?
Work area.
Internal.
I've clearly told you this name doesn't matter, right? You can give any name here, right? The value is going to create depends on this syntax or the reference, whatever you are providing here. If you provide a data element here, it will create as a variable. If you provide database table here, right? Since you are using table of and database table name, it will create as an internal table, not work area, even though you use WA underscore, right? Yes or no? This name doesn't matter. You can give any name, but depends on this syntax, it will create relevant object. Okay? Even though you use WA employee, it will create as an internal table only. This will become an internal table. Okay? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, now we talk about data objects, how they hold the values in the program runtime. But how the data is going to be populated? How we are going to populate the data into variables, work areas, and internal tables. Anyway, for constant, we need to define the value in the program. But how about the variables, work areas, and constants? How we are going to get data into these data objects? Observe here. One way is we can manually populate the values. For example, variable name equal to so and so value, like this. Here we are passing the value, right, manually. LV variable, LV name equal to name 1, LV name equal to name 2. Like this, we can pass some hard coded values, right? Or we can read the data from database tables and keep the data in the data objects. Observe this. This is the database table. We read the data from database tables into the program level, and where we are going to keep that data in the program level. So you read some records from the database table, where you are going to keep those records which you read from the database table in the program level.
Relation.
If it is a single field value, you are going to store the data in the variable. If it is a complete record, you are going to store the data into the work area. And if you are trying to select one or more records, there is a possibility of multiple records. So what is the data object we need to use?
Internal table.
Internal table. We need to use internal table if there is a possibility of reading more than one record, right, from the database. How can you make sure that? Depends on the primary key. If you read, let's assume this as a database table and it contains three fields: employee ID, employee name, and city. Now, you are reading the data by employee ID, right? For each employee ID, how many records you can find here? Employee ID is the primary key. You can find only one record for each employee, right? If you are reading data by employee ID, we can expect only single record. In that case, which one we can use? Work area we can use, right? But if you are trying to read data by city, how many records we can expect for each city? More than one record, right? One or more records. There is a possibility of multiple records. If you read by city, where city equal to Hyderabad, there might be multiple employees from the same city, right? In that case, how many records we can expect? One or more records, right? One record, or at least one record, or multiple records also we can expect. There is a possibility of multiple records. In this case, what type of data object we need to use? Internal table, right? Because there is a possibility of multiple records. We are going to read from the database table into application layer level. So we keep those records into an internal table, right? Clear? Or if you just want the employee name, you don't want the other details. You just want the employee name of the 100. You don't want any other fields, including employee ID. Do we need to take work area here? We can simply take variable. Okay. So we can populate the data into variable, work area and internal table manually in the program level, or we can read from the database tables and post it to data objects like variables, work areas and internal tables. Is everyone clear? Is everyone clear on this? So we
Yes,
have
sir.
three types of internal tables: standard internal table, sorted internal table and hashed internal table. I'll explain that later. What is the difference? Okay. Is everyone clear on data objects?